I want to start off by saying that we are in a relationship with everything, but I'm talking about the relationship we have with other beings, other people, and our capacity to be intimate with others and ourselves. I always go in this back and forth struggle with myself about my attempts to analyze relationships and things like limerence, codependency, and love in general because it's so complex and subjective. Oftentimes, when we get a label or a diagnosis, we tend to box ourselves in and limit ourselves from the whole experience. We might start to play into these scripts and use these explanations as crutches. But on the other hand, the naming of our experiences on an explicit level allows us to know that we do not suffer alone. So, my objective in talking about pathological and compulsive relationships is to help people name their experience and to help them transcend them, to break the cycle of toxic relationships. And we can only change that if we are conscious and willing to see our patterns within ourselves. So I want to deepen this question about, should I be in a relationship? And have you think about what it is that you've absorbed from your own family of origin or from the social conditioning that plays a part in the reenactments of the current relationships that you find yourself in and the issues. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the issues of the relationship all fall on you, but I am saying that the goal is to shift our focus on the things that we ourselves can change, and that doesn't include other people. You can't change how someone treats you, but you can set healthy boundaries and practice communicating and develop your values around what healthy relationships you're willing to stick around for. If you grew up in a home where that wasn't properly modeled to you, what healthy looks like, which is most of us because we are very flawed human beings, it doesn't mean that you can't achieve intimacy or closeness with another person. But it does mean that you might struggle with being in relationships. And you might struggle with this question, why should I be in a relationship? Some people even struggle with that and deep down desire to be in one, but constantly find themselves dissatisfied or hurt when they try. If you're repeatedly trying and finding yourselves in these situations, it makes sense why you might choose to be alone, whether that's a conscious or unconscious decision to protect yourself. So we keep coming back to this question, why should I be in a relationship? Assuming we're talking about romantic relationships, then we can take an objective view on a biological and evolutionary perspective, which is the approach of we need our human species to survive, so therefore we need to procreate. But let's say we're talking about close social ties when we're saying intimate relationships. Then we're going to look into a more interdependent theory of relationships and consider that relationships have benefits, but it also comes with its cost and risks. Interdependent theory of relationship also says that we are social creatures, and so we need one another to survive. But in the modern day, you can technically live in the woods by yourself or stay in your room, play video games and order food and survive. But the research continues to show that the quality of our lives and our overall well-being is dependent on the people we surround ourselves with. It's why when we look at the adverse childhood experiences research, we can see how a single protective relationship can buffer against future trauma. This means that it takes only one safe and nurturing person in a child's life to have a lifelong positive impact. It's also why in the research, the top 5 regrets that people have by a palliative nurse who worked alongside people on their deathbed showed that most people don't regret working more. In fact, they regretted spending too much time at work and not enough time with the people that they loved. Because relationships today aren't just about survival. We can provide for ourselves as women, as an independent species, but emotionally, we cannot survive without one another. And when we look at the safety plan, which is an assessment that we take with clients who have suicidal ideations or any signs of depression, we show that in the last question, when asked, what's the most important thing and worth living for? No one ever says anything like their PS5 or any video game, even if they love it so much. The research shows this, and even in my caseload, I always hear the same answers, whether it's the future, which symbolizes hope, or relationships, whether that's friends, family, or chosen family. And shockingly, even people who have complicated relationships with their family will even say family. Even if the answer to that question comes from a place of guilt of how they might make the people around them feel if they were to unalive themselves, it still keeps them alive. And I'll talk in another discussion about the relationship between guilt and love. But for now, I want to focus on how intimate relationships are not just for survival, but also for giving us a sense of meaning. And with meaning comes purpose and direction. On the flip side, we know that a lot of people come to therapy because their family won't, because they've experienced such traumatic things at the hands of people they were in relationships with. It is the interdependent nature of our human existence. The bottom line is that we are harmed in relationships, but we can only heal in them too. But if your family doesn't go to therapy, or if your partner doesn't want to go to therapy, then who are you in a relationship with? Well, the relationship you're in is one with yourself and your therapist. Think of the therapist as a conduit for your relational history, because how you experience relationships will reveal itself in the relationship you have with your therapist. And in all relationships, you will be challenged. But once you realize that you can confidently work through unresolved emotional conflicts, you can take that with you into other relationships in your life. We call that an emotionally corrective experience. But that's with good psychotherapy and trauma-informed care, that you might be able to practice relationship skills in a setting with a warm and competent therapist. This aligns with what we see in the research, that it doesn't matter what school of thought you practice in, an EMDR therapist compared to a CBT therapist. The research shows that the therapeutic alliance is what yields positive outcomes. So that means the relationship that you have with your therapist is the driving force of healing. So back to the question, should I be in a relationship? I think all intimate relationships will test our capacity to be vulnerable, to trust, and to be dependent on someone to some degree. It can reveal our flaws, our shortcomings, but also our strengths. And it can challenge our perspectives on ourselves and the world around us. So if you want to be in a relationship, and the question about whether you should be in one is really a question about, are you willing to face yourself. If you liked what you're watching, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys next time.